right, and welcome back, viewers. This is just a reasonably quick supplementary video. I had two things I wanted to expand upon, and I just didn't have time in the homily, which was already, time and a half what it should have been. The first thing is I wanted to make it clear about why these two tiers, tier 1 and tier 2, are distinct in my head, because I could see it as a reasonable counter-argument that effectively tier 1 and tier 2 are the same general thing. And in my head, they're not, because tier 1 is when God himself is so directly in front of you, you can't look away. And tier 2 is something genuinely odd, genuinely like, what do I make of this kind of moment? But God isn't necessarily the absolute cause of that event. And the literary reference I would go with, I didn't read the whole series, but there's a very well-known series of books out there called Left Behind. I only read the first book. It just wasn't my thing, what can I say? But Left Behind, the first book, is about the rapture. So basically, without warning, everybody who was in a perfect state of grace and worthy of heaven just disappeared. Their clothing plopped to the ground, and things went on, which was a problem if, say, the pilot of an airplane was raptured away. And what I thought was very realistic about that book, the good people are raptured away, everybody else is left to piece it together. So religious people who just weren't quite graceful enough to be part of the rapture themselves, they concluded it was in fact the rapture that we just witnessed. However, other people said, well, no, it was aliens teleporting a portion of our population away or whatever. Some people thought it was spontaneous combustion. So it was all these different theories. That would be a miracle in this second category. The laws of space and time changed in that moment for the people in that book. By contrast, and this comes up a lot in the literature of C.S. Lewis, when God is directly in front of you, you can't deny it. This happens a couple of times in his space trilogy, not with God, but with the equivalent of angels in that series. But with Aslan in the Chronicles of Narnia, no one ever talks to Aslan as if he's just a talking lion. You know that divinity is before you. And so when making up this pyramid, I felt the need to differentiate between the miracles where God is right in front of your eyeballs and you can't fool yourself into thinking you're seeing something else. The second tier is something immensely, immensely powerful and world-changing, but stubborn people could at least convince themselves that God was not the cause of it. So that's that for that part of the pyramid. And the other thing, because I wanted to get it off my chest, the miracle of my life in high school that I was describing during the homily, the one that fits into tier 6, it wasn't just a lovely conversation. Lovely conversations aren't necessarily miracles. So I would understand how people felt maybe a little skeptical about whether or not I watered down miracles too much for this last category. Here's the thing. The person I'm referring to in this moment in high school, she was a checker at the grocery store, and I was a bagger. And I very much enjoyed our little chit-chats during work. But we were always working. I never actually had a conversation with her. I just chatted with her for a minute or two when there wasn't a customer, at our line, and we were on the same machine. So I'm feeling spiritually weak, as I described as rationally as I could for the homily. And I'm sitting there. This was a few months before I started driving myself to work. So this was that awkward phase where I needed to work, but my dad still needed to pick me up most days. So I'm sitting there on the grocery carts outside waiting for my dad. And then this coworker also was waiting for her parent to pick her up and sat down and talked to me. And in my head, I'm willing to count this as a miracle because the two of us never had that opportunity. She wasn't part of my school district. I never saw her aside from work. And I never had the opportunity to talk to her except for that one 8-minute moment while we were waiting for our parents to pick us up from work. And after that conversation, we never again talked in that way. So in my head, it counts as a miracle because it was this almost 1 in a million coincidence that I was able to talk to her in that way at that time when she was, in fact, the person I needed to talk to get me out of the funk that I was in. So I wanted it on record that a lovely conversation with a good friend, okay, maybe that's a little too watered down to count as a miracle. I would respect that. But I would count a lovely conversation with someone you trust as a miracle when the opportunity to talk to them in the first place was so unlikely. It was pure serendipity to be able to talk to them in the first place. So, thank you for watching, and I do hope that this was somehow helpful to you. God bless.